Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Ninja Knight. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. So today I'm going to focus on the evil mutants for an X Men movie in the MCU. And this is individuals that I would like to see casted as characters. Now I've kept in mind as well too the various ages of the characters, and also as well too what they should, in my opinion, look like. They should look like what they did in the comics. So that's the reason for the majority of the casting that I've done here, as well as being good actors, good team players, and would make a nice ensemble, I think. So the general outline that I gave in the last video, and this is what I think from the evil side of the X-Men should be, because the previous one I gave the good side of things, that they should be a last line of defense against Mr. Sinister. They should act kind of akin to the Navy SEALs, and perhaps there should be some sort of mind control used by Xavier to keep them off the map at the time being, because his mind is able to be so powerful with Jean Grey as well too. Maybe they're amplifying it, and that all changes then as this movie goes on. So the first movie should focus on Mr. Sinister. He's desperate to seek out Scott Summers and Jean Grey. He's heard a prophecy from a mysterious mutant that a powerful mutant named Max Eisenhardt, aka Magneto, could topple his plans, but Magneto's location is unknown. Xavier's X-Men are the only line of defense against Mr. Sinister, as Xavier hides a dark secret that will be veiled should Magneto be found. So in relation to this, I think that maybe Mr. Sinister should have heard this prophecy from a mutant that Scott and Jean have to be procreating for him to exist, for him to live forever, and that he's going to put his mind into their child. So I've already said that I think Scott and Jean should be cast older. They should already have a child, Nathan Summers, that eventually becomes Cable, and maybe have some sort of story beat surrounding Mr. Sinister trying to get a hold of Nathan Summers and maybe putting his mind into his because his body's decaying or something like that, or that he can see the future of what's going to happen with Nathan Summers. Perhaps that would be something I would think of. So we have the director of the movie, I think, should be Guy Ritchie. So this is Guy Ritchie. He's directed films such as Snatch, Rock and Roller. He's done King Arthur as well too, Legend of the Sword, and he's done The Gentleman. He's also recently worked for Disney with Aladdin, and I think his sharp wit and his banter could really do well for both sides of teams. They could do well for the good side and could also do well for the bad side, so that we can see those morally grey areas, and also so that we can actually quite like the characters as well too. He has a good knack for making characters and actors as villains highly unlikable, and that's we're going to see that as well later on in the casting that I've made. In that he's made Jude Law a fantastic villain in King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, that I really liked, and then the various villains that he's had in the likes of Snatch as well too, and the fact that they had grey and moralist and they were ambiguous as well too, depending on what way you look at it, I think throws up great and different definitions. And again as well too, he made a great villain of Jafar as well too, in my opinion, in Disney's Aladdin. I think that was probably the strongest part of Disney's Aladdin. Again, it depends on how much free reign you leave Guy Ritchie have. And similarly as well too, in the Gentleman, I thought the villain in that was brilliant, and or villains if you want to call them that, because it depending on your outlook, everyone could be considered a villain within that movie, depending on what you think. So I think Guy Ritchie would be the man for me, and he would inject great banter and bring a sense of freshness, I think, to the MCU. So John Hamm is Mr. Sinister. This is probably going to come as no surprise, because John Hamm basically looks like Mr. Sinister. I think John Hamm is a very good actor. He was fantastic in Baby Driver, and that was something that I really recognised John Hamm as being quite the villain. He could really play the villain in that, because he came off really unlikable at times, and despite as well too being quite I suppose charismatic as well throughout the film. I've seen him in other roles as well too, like Tag as well too, where he's fairly villainous in that as well too. That he's not the most likable of individuals, but I've also seen him in other programs like Mad Men as well, which to me he was quite likable in, and he's been in other movies as well that I found him very likable and very charming. So I think he could work very well as Mr. Sinister, and I think that could really be a villain that would really step up in this movie that we haven't really seen before. And again, I don't want to be falling back on Magneto too much as well too. Within this fourth movie, certainly I think it should be gradually let in, and maybe let in towards the end, if not maybe in an after credit scene with who I am going to cast him. But again, Mr. Sinister, interesting character. It's a character that has basically a long spanning life, and again, when he's a child, he has the brain of a 50-year-old at that age, and he poses as a very vindictive, evil person, and as things go on, and he has an absolute fascination as well too with Scott Summers and Jean Grey and within the comics. So I think that should bore itself into this movie as well too. I think that should lead into it. So the next character that I'm going to have is going to be really Mr. Sinister's biggest accomplice, because I think within the evil mutants there should be kind of two factions. There should be a faction that are looking for Magneto to spring on from wherever he is, because they've heard great things about him, that he's going to be their revolutionary leader. And then I think you should have Mr. Sinister, which is if Magneto appears, it's going to really topple his plans and create problems. I think that would be the way to go forward. So with Mr. Sinister, and going to be his basically right hand man, is going to be Alice Eve as Lorelai. Now this mightn't be a name that a lot of people know, but this character has a very specific power set with hypnosis, and I think that this character would be very, very good insofar as that it could be an alternative to Xavier and Jean Grey, particularly with the mind battling as well too that can go on there. And I think then it could factor in later on. This could be a character that could be pivotal later on down the road of the movie, of being the one that could be involved in Jean Grey's death, because as I said in the previous video, I think Jean Grey should probably die towards the end of this movie and then either not be resurrected again. Certainly not as Phoenix, because we do not want to see Phoenix. Alice Eve is known for being in Star Trek, and she was also Typhoid Mary within the Netflix Daredevil TV show. So I think we've already seen Mahershala Ali being recast as Blade. So they obviously have no intention of bringing the Netflix characters over at the moment. So I think Odysee would definitely play a good Lorelai, because she is quite charming in her own right. She was very charming in Star Trek Into Darkness, and I think she definitely could play an evil character with kind of psychosis to it as well, that she did as Typhoid Mary. So I think she could bring an interesting factor to Lorelai. And as I said in the previous video, I've introduced Morph so that Mystique wouldn't have to appear. And Mystique is a character that I don't think should appear for another movie or two anyway, because she was very overused in my opinion within the Fox X Men movie. So I think it's time for other mutants like Lorelai to shine. And I think she should be Mr. Sinister's right hand woman, and would really, I think they'd play off each other nicely, in that she thinks she might get something out of being with Mr. Sinister, but Mr. Sinister's just using her as a tool. And then if she was to end up dying, because I think in the movie maybe she could escape, or maybe she could be killed by one of the X Men or one of the Brotherhood, then I think that could be a good and interesting way of kind of that character being moved along. Next we have Rory McCann as Sabretooth. Now, as you can see from the left hand image, this was the Hound on Game of Thrones. He's also played a character, a pretty mad character in Hot Fuzz. But Rory McCann is known for his stature. He's a very tall man. He's also very physically imposing, but also as well, he's very quick-witted. And I think within Game of Thrones, some of my highlights anyway throughout the series were the Hound and things that the Hound used to say. And also as well too, he's extremely intimidating, and he was very intimidating as the Hound. So I think this is a character and a man that could definitely work well with Guy Ritchie. It's a character as well that you would only need prosthetics in my opinion, and you wouldn't need to do too much alteration to Rory to make him Sabretooth. I think the movie could focus on Sabretooth basically looking for someone that could be his equal, that could fight him, and then towards the end, then like I said, an after credit scene maybe might feature Wolverine, and Sabretooth could crack his knuckles together and go, yes, I finally have an individual that can face me. I think Sabretooth should be the primary member as well too of the Brotherhood that's seeking out Magneto, because again, Sabretooth, as we know, is a character that, depending on which version of him you read, is a character that has a long history with Wolverine, and also is centuries old and has his own personal beliefs as well by the way he's treated. And I think Rory McCann could bring that to that role, in that he could give Sabretooth that outsider feel, that people looked at him and said, like, you know, had very, very poor and nasty things to say about him. Then he could use his berserkness as well. I think he'd be the character that I would probably use to kill Jean Grey, because I think within the first movie certainly as well too, Sabretooth wasn't given a lot of screen time, and I think even with Liev Schreiber wasn't sinister enough and didn't do sinister enough things. I know he killed Deadpool and Wolverine's various members of that team, but I would like to see this Sabretooth go all out and really enjoy and physically see him enjoy killing individuals, and particularly if he killed Jean Grey. I think that would be an interesting battle to see then between him and Cyclops, and how Cyclops would deal with that as well. Which I think would be very good going forward. But again, a brilliant actor, and I think could work very well with Guy Ritchie going forward as well too. The next one I have is Joseph Sikora as Pyro. So Joseph Sikora is Tommy in Power, and he is a brilliant actor because he can come off as very nice. He can come off as a really nice guy, but also in instances become absolutely psychotic. And I think that's something that Pyro needs to have. Pyro should be a character, I think, that has that psychoticness to him, that he can come off as being nice and really friendly, and then off, out of nowhere should become absolutely unstable, and then just decides to torch everything. I think this guy should get a lot of reprieve from Sabretooth, and then again maybe pats on the back for how unnecessarily evil he can be as well, because Sabretooth should enjoy that. I think Joseph Sikora would battle nicely against Charlie Hunnam's Iceman, and again I think it will be a character that I think would move on in the movies as well too, and become a little bit more prominent than he was in the Fox X-Men movies. It's a character I absolutely love, and he's recently got a Marvel Legends figure announced, so I think Joseph Sikora would really be good. And again, like I said, he's pretty versatile. He's been in a good few movies. He's been in the Jack Ryan movies, not Jack Ryan, sorry. He's been in the Tom Cruise movie Jack Reacher, and I thought he was good in that as well too. So I think from his performances in the Seasons of Power and how off the charts he can get, he would definitely be one that I would look at, certainly as Pyro. The next one is Cillian Murphy. So you'll notice with a lot of the actors that I'm suggesting as well too, it's kind of going back to that Lord of the Rings template of like someone who can really act with their eyes, and I think it's very important that they have good facial expressions. Cillian Murphy is an Irish actor, and I think he would be phenomenal as Avalanche. So he's currently playing Thomas Shelby as in Peaky Blinders, and he uses a very big range of emotions, particularly with his eyes and his face, and I think that is important for an individual like Avalanche, and I think he should be one of the pivotal members as well too, and looking to find Magneto, and he could be one that would really push the Brotherhood on. Again, you're seeing someone that can banter as well too, and that would work well within the crew that you're being used here for the Brotherhood of Evil. He played the Scarecrow in Batman Begins, so he's no stranger to comic book movies. He's no stranger to an ensemble cast as well too, and I think that this guy could really rock it as Avalanche, pardon the pun. So Avalanche is a character that hasn't appeared in any of the X-Men movies yet, and I think this is a character that really could really do well on his debut if he was to make it into this movie. The next one we have is Eddie Marsan as Toad. So as you can see here, Eddie Marsan has worked with Guy Ritchie before. He's worked with him on Sherlock Holmes, both Sherlock Holmes movies as Lestrade, and he's worked on The Gentleman with him. Eddie Marsan is an individual that has a very particular look about him. He was fantastic as well too, dramatically fantastic in Ray Donovan, or Ray Donovan, whichever way you want to describe it, as Terry. He was an individual with Parkinson's, so again he's no stranger to playing a role that everyone's looking at him and not quite sure what he's about. Toad is a character I think I would love him to see, and Toad is another character that you could take one of two ways. You could be a Magneto fanatic, or he could be someone that just doesn't really care like he was in the X-Men Evolution. But I think Eddie Marsan would definitely play the role very, very well, and like I said, being part of a bigger cast as well too was no issue to him. And again, he would have been my choice for maybe a Ben Affleck Penguin, but I think for me, I think he'd make a fantastic Toad, depending on what way you want to look at it, for him. Next, I have Gemma Arterton as Rogue. So I think this is going to probably surprise an awful lot of people, but I think Rogue should start off as a villain within these movies and then maybe turn towards the light. As we can see here, we have an image of her there with Magneto. Now, Gemma Arterton is an actress that had been in the James Bond movie. She was in the second one, Quantum of Solace, and she's been in multiple of other things. She's been in Clash of the Titans as well too. She was in that and she was very good. She's an actress that I really like, and I think she could bring off she looks quite like Rogue as well too, and I think she could bring off that southern charm as well that Rogue has, because she's pretty charming in the roles that she's been in. Particularly she was very well received in Clash of the Titans, and she's 34. So this is the thing, that I'm casting her kind of a little bit younger, so it's that when we see Magneto as well too, there's not a huge age gap, but also when Gambit is eventually going to come along, that I want Gambit to be kind of a little bit older, maybe in his 30s, maybe late 20s, and then that could go nicely down with Rogue in my opinion. But yeah, she would be my choice for Rogue. I think you start the first movie off with her definitely as a villain, maybe second way throughout, maybe in the second movie, halfway through, after they lose Storm, perhaps Rogue decides to change sides. You could maybe get her to inhabit some of Storm's powers. Or again, if they're going to introduce her as well in Captain Marvel, you could have Gemma in between Captain Marvel and this movie too. So I think that would really, really work well, and she would definitely be my choice for Rogue. This is my choice for Magneto. So this is the heaviest hitter of them all, and it would be Nikolaj Coster-Waldau. So for many people who know, he was in Game of Thrones, he was Jaime Lannister, and I think this guy would be absolutely phenomenal as Magneto. Magneto is a character that should be absolutely charming and absolutely reviled, I think, in my opinion. When he started Game of Thrones, Jaime Lannister was my least favourite character. I couldn't understand why he did what he did, and he just was all round nasty. And I think that's the way we should see Magneto until later. Like Jaime Lannister, he became very redeemed and kind of seen the error of his ways, and that's something I think that would be very important to Magneto, that he should be charming. I had thought about Viggo Mortensen as Magneto, but I think Viggo Mortensen might be a little bit too old at this stage, and I think Nikolaj Coster-Waldau could definitely pull off a little bit more of the stunts that would go with it. Now, in specifics to Magneto, he will be Max Eisenhardt, and I do want him to be a Holocaust survivor because I think that is a very important factor of this character's history. I do not want to see this character altered in very many ways. What I would do is I would have the character having existed from the Holocaust, and I would have Xavier realize the potential that this guy is going to have, and I would have Xavier have him either on an island like the Savage Land or maybe Genosha or something like that, and have him physically stuck there, maybe mentally stuck there, or something that Xavier has him blocked, and it's amplified as well too, maybe with Jean Grey and or Bishop. So I think that that's the way I would approach Magneto. I would still make him a Holocaust survivor because I think that's absolutely crucial to the role of Magneto, that we have that. You could also have a Children of Lear kind of way of looking at him, in that if he steps off the island too often, he will age significantly, because that would be another way of getting around that issue of him not aging between the Holocaust times and between now, because I think that this X-Men should have a modern day freshness and flavour to it, but I do not think that Magneto should be changed in any way, race change or sex change whatsoever. I think that he should be a survivor of the Holocaust, and that there should be a way of being able to write him in. So again, I would have him probably frozen in time in some way, that he doesn't age, and then by the time he comes out he has his old outdated ways of thinking, and he could be a really interesting villain going from there. And again, he still harbours that hatred, and he still harbours that problem of being a Holocaust survivor and wanting to get out of and have the world really pay for their mistakes. So I think that would be me for Magneto. I think he could make an excellent Magneto, and I certainly think, as well as him being a part of an ensemble cast, he would be absolutely outstanding as Magneto, and I think he could push it just as well as Michael Fassbender did, and definitely as good as Sir Ian McKellen. So I think this is the hardest one to cast of them all, would be Magneto, and I think Nikolaj Coster-Waldau would definitely do a great job of it. He also has an ability to speak in different languages as well too, which I think will be important. And again, he could train himself into speaking maybe with more of a Polish dialect, or perhaps something maybe even German dialect, perhaps, if he wanted to, and it could really factor in then to the character, and I think it would be fascinating. But again, I'm going to highlight the fact that I think that he should be a man trapped in time, similarly to Captain America, and then when he steps out, maybe there's some sort of explanation as to why he was in a sort of time capsule. And this is an individual that Mr. Sinister is very fearful of. So again, I think in the second movie as well too, he's going to play a bigger part, getting himself back to normal insofar as getting himself updated on what's happening in the world, the Brotherhood filling him in, Sabretooth being his closest companion, and then we see Wolverine then taking part in X-Men 2, perhaps after an after credit scene with Wolverine appearing maybe somewhere, or if he is indeed a teacher at the school, maybe somewhere. I would love to see Magneto using him as a puppet to kill someone within the X-Men. And again, I think that X-Men that I'm probably going to kill in X-Men 2 is going to be, unfortunately, is going to be Storm, because again, I think that's someone that poses a significant threat, and I think that really would give massive credence then to Magneto as it would go then, and then maybe have Scott blast off his helmet and Xavier have him under mind control, or something to do with Bishop maybe to take him out somehow or some way. But I think he could be Marvel's next big bad. He could be, I think for me, Magneto could be the biggest villain that they could have, and certainly as well too with Thanos out of the picture. I think Magneto could step into that frame now, but again, like I said, this guy is going to have to factor in the Holocaust survival for him to be a sympathetic character, because that's what we need to see with him. We need to see him that he can be at his most evil, he can be at his worst, but still we can have a turn of sympathy for him being that villain. Anyway, that's my choice for the Brotherhood. I think everyone is going to work really well with Guy Ritchie if they went with Guy Ritchie. I would love to see Guy Ritchie do this, and I think that, again, that fast-paced kind of evil villain that he could work with. He did very well with Mark Strong as the villain in Sherlock Holmes. He was fantastic as well too with any villain that he's used within his universes, and I think Nikolaj Coster-Waldau could definitely step up to the plate, and I think he could be someone that people could look at and say, wow, that's a definitive Magneto. That Magneto is very powerful, and that would be where I would go. Going back again, Gemma Arterton maybe could be involved with one of the Brotherhood. She could be involved with Magneto. She could have her own sort of plans going forward, that maybe she might want to take some sort of power, knowing that she has that power, and then eventually she sees the light and goes over. So I'd love to see Gemma Arterton taking that role initially as a bad guy, and then completely flipping then throughout maybe the series into a good guy when she sees that the Brotherhood are just intent on destruction and chaos, and she doesn't agree with that, and or maybe Gambit gets floated into the X-Men and she falls in love with him. I'm probably going to cast Gambit and a few other X-Men, like newer X-Men, in a later video. So I think that's how that would go. Again, she's British. I would expect her to do an American accent, and particularly a Louisiana accent, perhaps a Southern accent for sure. Anyway, and I think that she could really do it justice, and then she could really draw Gambit's eye. Eddie Marsan, again, going back to him, great ensemble character, fantastic in Ray Donovan, brilliant as Lestrade as well too, and Sherlock Holmes has already worked with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law, so the connections are already there for people that have worked in the MCU, and I think he really, really could do very, very well as Toad, and give a very good dramatic performance that we haven't quite seen from Toad yet, because for me Toad is a favourite character of mine, because he's just an interesting character. He can be very funny, and also as well too devilishly wicked. Cillian Murphy going back on it again, Irish actor. I love to see Irish actors in these projects. And again, as Avalanche, I think he could bring a great physical range to him. He could definitely bring great facial expressions, and I think he could be maybe vying for leadership of the Brotherhood as well too, along with Sabretooth, and could be one as well too. That's very interesting in finding Magneto for his own gain. Joseph Sikora, like I said, from Power, really, really liked him in that. He's a really strong actor. And again, when we seen him as kind of unhinged crime boss in that, and other people followed him, it was very interesting to see, and I think he could make a very good Pyro, and he could be someone that could really delight in the chaos that he does, because that's what he did as Tommy as well too in Power. So again, I think he would have the look, and again, he is someone that could pull off that suit very well and pull off that maniacal ability. This for me, there's no question. I don't think there's anybody else in the world that could play Sabretooth. I would go all out to get Rory McCann as Sabretooth, the same way I would go all out to get Nikolaj Coster-Waldau as Magneto, and the same way I would go all out with Gemma Arterton as Rogue, and with the people I've cast as the X-Men as well too, I would go all out. But I would certainly go all out to try and get Rory McCann, and I think this guy would be an exemplary Sabretooth. And again, I think in the first movie, particularly if he was to stand up as well too against or with Mr. Sinister, he could be very interesting going forward, and I think he could be really, really good at slagging off Scott Eastwood, because Scott Eastwood as Wolverine, there'd be a great banter and dynamic, I think, between those two characters, and I think Rory McCann could absolutely pull her off 100%. Alice Eve, like I said earlier on, it's an interesting character. It's a character that focuses on the hypnosis, so a good mind power to counteract Xavier and Jean Grey as well too. So I think that's important that the Brotherhood have that type of member, so that they can help face off against those kind of more psychological members of the X-Men. And again, I think it's a really interesting character that should be the right hand man to Mr. Sinister side of things. Again, I would probably put some generic mutants in there as well too. Maybe have her control them, have them hypnotically charged with helping out Mr. Sinister, and then they break free towards the end. Maybe even you might slip Rogue into that kind of void there, maybe that she might be hypnotized into supporting the Brotherhood because of her power as well too. That could be a story beat. John Hamm is Mr. Sinister, like I said, very good with the ensemble films, very good actor, and I think would be a strong Mr. Sinister. Controversially, I think perhaps maybe he should die, and I think maybe even in an after credit scene we get to see a young Mr. Sinister, or maybe even a John Hamm Mr. Sinister reveal to us who that mysterious prophetic mutant was, and it could be Apocalypse, and I think that would be one. I think Apocalypse was done very poorly in the Fox X-Men movies, and I think he badly needs a redemption arc. And like I said, while I think Magneto is a brilliant villain and could become the Thanos of the universe, you do ultimately need Magneto to unite with the X-Men eventually in a big event, and I think that big event is going to be Apocalypse. I think Apocalypse could be as big if not bigger than Thanos. I know I've said that about Magneto, but I think Apocalypse could be that guy. So again, with Mr. Sinister having that longevity in his life, having come across Apocalypse, I think Apocalypse could be building up in the background, and I think maybe in an after credit scene, after the Wolverine scene, maybe you see Apocalypse is the one that gives him the information that he has, and maybe removes a hoodie, and we see Apocalypse or something lighting up that we know that it's going to be Apocalypse going forward. That's my choice for the Brotherhood for this movie. I'm going to do another video on later members of the X-Men that might be able to introduce into X-Men 2 or X-Men 3 that the baton can be passed off towards. But yeah, that's my Brotherhood, and definitely even mutants then for the recasting of the MCU movie. So I hope you like this video. Please like, share and subscribe. Leave a comment if you like the choices that are there. I think the more the likes of Marvel see these choices, the more they might actually suggest and think about these characters the way they are portrayed in this video, and it'd be something I think if you're interested in seeing it, it'd be nice to be shared and shown to Marvel and said, look, this is who we're thinking of, who we'd like to see as these characters, because sometimes Marvel do listen, and sometimes these companies do listen, and I think with this whole situation, companies are going to have to listen to fans to say, look, who do you want and what do you want, and this is certainly something that I want to see. I would love to see all the actors that I named included with the X-Men and in this kind of frame, that they are very kind of modern, and that Magneto and John Hamm's Mr. Sinister and then Apocalypse are going to be your kind of older statesmen. They are going to be able to take you through time, and again you have Wolverine and Sabretooth there, and then Professor X has his darkness about him that he's had Magneto mentally put away for a long time, or maybe Magneto's off on an island after some sort of operation against him, something like that, because I think, again, like I said, Magneto's going to have the Holocaust story behind him to make him as impactful as he can be, and he will be. Anyway, that's my video. Please like, share and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I will talk to you later.